If you own a 4th gen Ram 1500, you're probably familiar with this, or this, and you probably need one of these. Today, I'm going to replace mine. The fuel level sensor is a common failure on these trucks and causes your gas gauge to work intermittently or not at all. Mine stopped working completely for a few months, then worked fine for a while, and now works when it wants to. I've been living with it for a few years, but fun fact, your remote start doesn't work when your truck thinks there's no fuel. After the last winter, I decided I'm going to try and fix this. To repair it, you have two options. The factory part is not available by itself. You have to buy the whole fuel pump assembly. It's like $600, and my fuel pump works fine, so I'm going with option 2, a cheap aftermarket sensor from Amazon. Now that I've got the truck up as high as I can safely lift it and the wheel and fender liner off, I can figure out how to get this tank down. Before I do that, I'm going to remove the fuel pump fuse and start the truck to relieve any pressure that might still be in the lines. Some people say it's easier to lift the bed. After doing this job, I don't think you can actually get the fuel pump out that way if you have a crew cab. Also, my bed is in really great shape and I'm worried about messing it up, so I'm going to try to drop the tank in my garage on my back. This should be fun. The next thing I did was disconnect the fuel filler, remove the gas cap, then 3 T20 bolts holding it to the bed. So now we're at the point where we can start dropping the fuel tank. I'll be honest with you, I haven't done that on this truck before, so we're going to figure it out together. I tried to run the tank about as low as I could. Gas gauge doesn't work, so I'm hoping for the best there. I've got the jack under the middle of the tank. We'll see if that balances. I really hope this doesn't end as one of those YouTube fail videos, but let's see what happens. Next, I carefully remove the 16mm bolts holding the tank straps. I definitely don't want these to break, so I was extra careful and did these by hand. I removed the straps and lowered the tank just a little so I'd have better access to all the lines. Quick update, the tank is not super balanced. It's tilting towards the front of the truck right there. I'm going to keep moving forward. I found it easier to disconnect these two lines at the front of the tank rather than trying to disconnect them from the top. You just have to pull the line out of the little clips on the frame and then both lines will come out with the tank. I use a rag to catch the little bit of fuel that comes out, and safety glasses are a good idea. Next, I removed this connector and hose from the passenger side of the tank. Then I disconnected this line, electrical connector, and hose from the fuel filler. There's also one electrical connector on the fuel pump assembly itself that I couldn't get the camera on, but I had to disconnect that before I could fully lower the tank. This was a little tricky. I ended up having to get a couple of helpers and a second jack, but eventually I got the tank out without dropping it, at least until it was closer to the ground. I put it on a piece of cardboard to slide it out from under the truck, then cleaned all the junk off the top so nothing falls in. I removed this line that I couldn't get off with the tank in the truck, then removed the metal ring holding in the fuel pump assembly. And now I can remove the fuel pump assembly to get to the sensor. If there's a way to do this without spilling fuel everywhere, I certainly don't know how. The old sensor just clips to the bucket. This plastic feels kinda brittle though, so I was very careful disconnecting the sensor. The sensor has 3 electrical connectors that have to be removed. I found this way more challenging than it should have been, but eventually I got it. The cheap Amazon sensor is the same, except it has this weird hook thing instead of the ground connector, a quick cut and splice, and I'm ready to reinstall. For some reason, these connectors don't give you that satisfying click sound, but they're all plugged in and it's ready to go back in the tank. The sensor did come with a new seal, which is nice. I'd also like to point out, if you're going to attempt a job like this, you should check the float arm against the old one and make sure it didn't get bent when they stuffed it in a tiny little box. We'll talk more about that later, after I filled the tank for the first time. I reinstalled the lock ring and then tried to figure out how to get this thing back in the truck. Eventually, I gave up and decided to convert my truck to a hybrid. That was dumb, so I recruited some helpers and somehow got the tank back in the truck. Once the tank was strapped back in, I reinstalled the fuel lines at the front, making sure the lines get clipped in at the frame. Reconnected the fuel filler lines. And these two on the side of the tank. Reinstall the fuel filler, put the fuel pump fuse back in, and now we can see if it works. First, I just turned the pump on and checked for leaks. Then I started it up. I'm going to ignore that low fuel warning and go check for leaks. Everything looks good, so I'm taking it for a test drive to the gas station. After filling it up, my gauge works and there's no lights on. Alright, so it's been a few weeks and 2 fill-ups since I did the fuel level sensor, and so far so good. I don't have any lights on the dash, and the gauge seems to be working. The only thing I've noticed is I think it might be reading a little bit low. I used to get about 400 miles till the light came on. Now I'm getting like 350, 360. I think the float rod might have been bent slightly, probably in shipping, and that's why it's reading maybe a gallon or 2 low. No big deal. Everything else seems to work. The good news is I won't run out of gas, and now my remote start works. I make these videos for fun. I'm not trying to tell you what to do with your own truck, but I'm glad I didn't take a chance on an aftermarket fuel pump or spend $600 on a factory Mopar pump when this $27 sensor seems to work pretty okay. So thank you for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please hit the like button, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. I really appreciate any and all feedback. It really helps me to learn and to grow the channel. And I'll see you in the next video.